Hello, and welcome to an insider's view of the music that you will hear on Masterworks 3 on February 11th and 12th. There are two works that are featured. The large work on the program is the Symphony No. 3 by the African-American composer Florence Price. Now, Florence Price was really quite extraordinary. She was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, but it didn't take long in her life before she realized she had to move her and her family out of Arkansas and up to Chicago for racist reasons, for trying to get a better life for her and her family. In fact, she came through some really tough times. She ended up going to the New England Conservatory of Music, and her mother said to her, "I want you to tell people that you're a Mexican American and not an African American, so there would be less of a chance of her running into problems while she was a student there." I really can't imagine what that was like, but she persevered and she got a really great education and she became a really, really fine composer. In fact, so fine that in 1933, the Chicago Symphony took notice and performed her first symphony. This is the first time that a major orchestra in the United States performed a work by an African-American woman composer. Now, she also, just to sort of put her in context a little bit, she also arranged the song "My Soul's Been Anchored in the Lord" that Marian Anderson sang in 1939 in front of the Lincoln Memorial. So she was a person who was right in the thick of things, in the middle of things, making a name for herself and making a life for herself. Well, in 1938, she was commissioned by the Works Progress Administration's Federal Music Project to write a new symphony, the Symphony No. 3 that we will be performing for you here on the stage of the Capitol Theater. The first performance actually took place by the Detroit Civic Orchestra at the Detroit Institute of the Arts in 1940. This four-movement work is really quite extraordinary and has a lot of feeling and heart and a real sense of expression of Florence. So the first movement and the second movement, they're both sort of slowish movements. The first movement's a little bit faster, but the second. But there's sort of a seriousness that she creates in the first two movements. That's followed by the third movement, which is a juba dance, which is an original sort of African-American slave dance in which legs are stomping and arms are flailing and slapping and patting parts of the body. And this dance is really quite fun. Now, if you decide to do it while you're in the hall, please do it only to yourself and not to your neighbors. That would be perfect. And then finally, we have this scherzo finale, and it is exactly that. It's fun, it's uplifting, it's light, and it really will take you on a journey. Her symphonies are really something extraordinary, and we're thrilled to be able to perform this symphony. This is the first time that the Windsor Symphony has performed one of her four symphonies. Now, opening the program is a work by Oscar Peterson. Yes, the jazz pianist, world phenom, Oscar Peterson. He wrote a piece called the Canadiana Suite, which was later orchestrated by Lance Anderson. Lance was the music director of Shakira Saida, a pop singer that we had here in Windsor just a couple of years ago. And he said to me backstage, just right over here, "I've got this new piece by Oscar Peterson orchestrated. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Absolutely." So recently, I had the amazing fortune of sitting down with Kelly Peterson, Oscar's widow, Thompson Egbo. Thompson is the soloist for the concert, and Lance Anderson. And he is really the one who brought it all together and made this happen for Windsor.
Well, the funny thing is, originally I'd asked Kelly if anybody had done an orchestral arrangement of the Canadiana Suite, and she didn't think so. And we actually looked it up, and there hadn't been. There had been a big band arrangement by Phil McConnell, Rob McConnell, sorry, and Rob had done a beautiful arrangement of it, but there hadn't been an orchestral arrangement. So we were just talking about that, and I asked her if she would mind if I would do one. And right at that point, the Okanagan Symphony, about a month later, called me and said they were looking for an orchestral arrangement of it. And I said, well, funny you should ask, because I was just talking to Kelly about this. And that's how it went. We went with, I got a commission from the Okanagan Symphony Orchestra to write the arrangement. And they were going to do a performance with Ballet Kelowna. So there was ballet and the orchestra playing and the jazz trio. So that's really how my involvement started with the Canadiana Suite.
And Kelly, what does it mean to you to see a piece like this of Oscars come to life in sort of this different way and sort of get legs of its own in kind of a way that maybe wasn't originally intended?
It's very gratifying to see that happen, and to first of all, it's important to me to have Oscar's music performed. It's meant to be performed, and even though he's not here to play it, having others play it is very important. But to have it performed in a different context and with the symphony is also, as I said, very gratifying. Um, it signals to me that Oscar's place as a composer is now becoming more recognized. And that's one of my main goals as the steward of his legacy, shall we say, to ensure that people are aware of the music he wrote and to have it performed and to have it be something that people will continue to look at and continue to want to perform for years and years and years.
Now, the work itself is, in effect, a travel guide. Each one of the movements in the work depicts a different aspect of Canada, which I assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, probably even dates back to his earliest days as a child when his father was a porter on the Canadian Pacific Railway. His sort of interest in this sort of huge landscape of Canada. We, and by we, I mean the sort of royal we of Lance Anderson, chose five movements to put together for our suite. Lance, tell us about these five movements that we're going to hear. I can remind you which ones they are if you'd like, but they're pretty spectacular.
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts with the Ballad from the East. Basically, Oscar went across the country from east to west. And what I love about them is that they're like it's an impressionistic uh, view of just orally of what he felt about that. And some of them may have come from his father just telling stories about those areas. But certainly by that point, Oscar had traveled the country many times on concert tours and so on. So had seen them. But it wasn't it's a funny thing, like with a genius like Oscar, he would just get this impression, and it could have been immediate, it could have been a memory, and then this music would come to him. And the funny thing about, say, the Ballad of the East is that it's got a sort of, you can hear the sea in it, and not even as much as the piano. Once you scored that for orchestra, it starts sounding like La Mer. It has a lot of Ravel and Debussy uh, kind of harmonies in it, and a lot of Gershwin like harmonies as well. But once you score it, you feel the surge of the sea and stuff. So I found that with every one of his pieces, the Laurentide Waltz, of course, is uh, about the Laurentian Hills north of Montreal, and even to put that as a waltz is a funny kind of thing. Like it's a memory maybe of French Canadian waltzes or something that came to him. And he would just grab things like that and go with it. Not that I don't think he really would have thought about it that much. He just would go with his impressions. And of course, Place Henri, which is his home neighborhood, that really was an expression of that vibrant neighborhood and everything that's going on. I mean, it's really going, as Thompson knows, it really moves, and and it's got all that. It sort of reminds me of an American Paris. It's got all those sounds of the street in the piece itself. And uh, I know we did March Past. Oh, of course, Hogtown Blues. Hogtown Blues, an interesting piece, and it's a blues for Toronto, but it's got a sophistication to it. And I guess that's what he was trying to get across. This was a big city. This was a metropolitan city, and it's very dense harmony and very sort of intellectual for a blues, you know. And March Past, I guess, was from the Calgary Stampede. He was inspired by that, and he just has, you know, the sounds of like the parade and what was going on again in his mind. So
Well, and I love that each one of these are so picturesque. I mean, that was what attracted me to the music as well.
right,
In addition, is that this sort of interesting instrumentation, one that we don't normally put on our stage at the Windsor Symphony on a classical concert, and then it's jazz piano trio and orchestra. And so for this performance, Thomas Egbo will be joining us, and we're really thrilled that you'll be making your debut with the Windsor Symphony for this concert. Now, Thompson, many people may know you through your recordings, like A New Standard and The Offering, recordings that you either made by yourself or with your trio, which you know, you are an incredible artist, and all the music that I've heard of yours really is just it's just sort of the spilling out of this music from you. It's really quite extraordinary. What is it like to delve into the mind and soul of someone like an Oscar Peterson, and then think about bringing that music to life?
For me, it's exciting. I'm very humbled and nervous, I think in a good way, but definitely I mean, there's a couple of different elements of the nervousness, which is one, having to play the music, but two, also, having to do it justice, but also just the connection of it being just a very Canadian piece. And I think, sometimes you talk about Canadian culture and people are sort of just like, what is that? But this is it. Like, this is an opportunity to actually really show Canadian culture. And so for me, it's very exciting. I tell people my very first jazz album was an Oscar Peterson album. It was him doing West Side Story. That was the first CD and someone ever gave me of any type of music. And so, his music's always been a part of the collections that I have. And so, and it's funny because for me, now, we've got we've got Spotify and all these, streaming platforms, and you get to see the body of work people have created. And I always say to people, there's no, it's not a coincidence that your favorite artists also have the biggest body of work. And wow, going through like the amount of stuff he has, I think it's just a testament to just one, how long he did it for, but just how prolific he was at getting the music out there. So I'd like to say, I'm very excited about it. I've even spoken to some of my former, I would say teachers or coaches, if you will, about, hey, this is coming down the pipe, and I'd love to get your eyes on what I'm going to do just to make sure that I've executed the best to my ability.
And I think there's something really humble and really special about what you just said. And I think it's true of almost all artists, that no matter what ilk you are, where you are in the process, we often take advice from others and still visit with mentors and try to really keep honing our craft. And that, I think, is why your performance of this piece, and I do want to thank Lance for introducing you to us, but I think that's why your performance of this piece will be so special, because you have such an ability to create from your soul, and then to understand the creator from that perspective, I think is really quite extraordinary. We're very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you.
I look forward to seeing you here at the Capitol Theatre on February 11th or 12th for a performance of Oscar Peterson's Canadiana Suite, as well as Florence Price's Symphony No. 3.